My name is Daniel Ruiz, and for the past 4 years, I've worked as a systems analyst at a mid-sized tech company in Denver. The job wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. I was the kind of person who found satisfaction in solving problems other people couldn't. Complex server crashes, stubborn software bugs, tangled data migration issues. You name it, I had tackled it at some point. I wasn't the loudest guy in the room, but my manager, Karen Fields, knew she could rely on me. I'd been the one answering calls at 2 a.m. when a client's network went down. I'd stayed late fixing errors just so our team's reputation stayed clean. And slowly, over the years, I built a name for myself as the go-to problem solver. When Karen announced that the company was opening a position for a team lead for systems operations, I almost didn't believe it at first. It was a role I had been quietly working toward for years. A bump in salary, yes, but more than that, it was recognition, validation that the long nights, the missed weekends, the quiet sacrifices had all meant something. I wasn't the only one eyeing it. Ethan Miller had joined our team 2 years earlier. Ethan was complicated. He was charming in that slick, salesman kind of way, always cracking jokes, always smiling at the right people, always showing up with Starbucks or Karen right before a big meeting. A lot of people liked him, but I didn't trust him. I'd seen him slide ideas into conversations that I knew came from other people's work. I'd heard whispers from coworkers about how he somehow fast-tracked at his last company, but no one could explain how. He was the kind of guy who made you feel like you were paranoid for doubting him, until you realized he'd already pulled the rug out from under you. Still, I tried not to think about him too much. I figured my record spoke for itself. If the decision came down to who had the experience and who Karen leaned on when the pressure was highest, I knew where I stood. Or at least, I thought I did. 2 weeks before the promotion interviews, disaster struck. One of our biggest clients suffered a catastrophic server crash. It wasn't just downtime. It was millions of dollars at stake. Emails flooded in. Phones rang off the hook, and the entire department scrambled to piece together what had gone wrong. The next morning, I was called into Karen's office. Her voice over the intercom was clipped, colder than I'd ever heard. My stomach knotted immediately. When I walked in, she didn't offer me a seat. She just turned her monitor toward me. On the screen was a system log, my username, my credentials. The entry showed a change in the configuration files, the exact kind of change that would have caused the client's catastrophic crash. For a second, the words blurred in front of me. "Daniel," Karen said, her voice sharp, "this log is serious. If you made this change, it's not just a mistake. It's negligence. Do you understand how much damage this caused?" I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. "Karen, I didn't do this. I swear, I haven't even touched that server in days." Her eyes narrowed. "The log says otherwise." I stammered, tried to explain, but what could I say? The log was supposed to be the truth. In our world, logs are like fingerprints. If they said I made the change, who would believe otherwise? I walked out her office numb. The air in the hallway felt heavier. Coworkers' eyes lingered a second too long. Whispers followed me as I passed. In one day, I went from being the reliable problem solver to the guy who might have sabotaged a client. That afternoon, Ethan appeared at my desk. He leaned casually against a partition, sipping his overpriced coffee like nothing in the world could bother him. "Tough break, huh?" he said softly, so no one else would hear. His lips curved into a smug little smile. "Logs don't lie, man. You might want to get your resume updated." The words hit me like ice water. The way he said it, the smirk, the absolute certainty that I was finished. That's when it all clicked. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't some random glitch. This was Ethan. He had the same level of access I did. He knew exactly what kind of change would bring a system crashing down. And he knew the timing, just before the promotion interviews, would devastate me. If he could frame me as incompetent or worse, reckless, then Karen would have no choice but to take him seriously for the team lead role. My years of work, my loyalty, my reputation, gone just like that. I went home that night angrier than I've ever been in my life. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just replayed every moment in Karen's office, every word Ethan had said at my desk, Every sacrifice I had made for this job that suddenly seemed like it meant nothing. But then, in the haze of my fury, a thought hit me. Our company had recently upgraded the server rooms. Along with new racks and updated fire suppression, they'd also installed brand new security cameras. Cameras that didn't just cover entrances and exits, but pointed directly at the terminal stations. If Ethan had really logged in under my name, he would have had to physically sit at one of those terminals. And if he did, then somewhere on some hard drive, there would be footage of him typing under my credentials. The logs might lie, but cameras? Cameras don't lie. And suddenly, I wasn't just angry anymore. I was determined. This wasn't over. The day after my meeting with Karen, I walked into the office with a hollow feeling in my chest. I could feel the weight of suspicion clinging to me. People weren't saying anything outright, but I caught the glances, the hushed tones when I walked past, the half-smiles that disappeared the second I turned around. It was like overnight, I'd gone from respected teammate to office pariah. Karen didn't say much either. She was professional, but distant. That was almost worse. Before, she would stop by my desk, ask how things were going, sometimes even crack a dry joke. Now, it was all clipped instructions and formality. And Ethan was thriving. I noticed him hanging around Karen's office more, volunteering for tasks that weren't his. He was loud in meetings, throwing out buzzwords, try to look like the hero stepping in to save the team. It made my blood boil, but I knew if I lashed out, I'd only look worse. I needed proof. That night, I stayed late after most people had left. The hum of the servers filled the quiet office, and I pulled up every bit of documentation I could access. The logs were clean, too clean. Someone had gone out of their way to make it look airtight, but then I remembered the cameras. The new security system had been one of Ethan's bragging points during team chatter. He had mocked how Big Brother was watching everyone now. It was meant as a joke, but I remembered thinking at the time, finally, some accountability. Now, it might be the one thing that could save me. I reached out to Sophie Lane, our HR representative. Sophie wasn't just HR. She was also one of the few people in the company who actually seemed to care about fairness. I'd seen her stand up for others before when shady things happened, and I prayed she'd at least hear me out. When I explained everything, my spotless record, the suspicious timing, Ethan's behavior, she frowned, her pen tapping against her notebook. "Daniel," she said carefully, "logs don't usually lie, but if what you're saying is true, the security cameras might tell a different story." My heart jumped. "The footage from that night should still be archived," she continued, "but access is restricted. I'll need to file a formal request to review it. It could take a few days." Days. The interviews for the team lead position were in less than a week. Ethan was already positioning himself as a frontrunner. If I didn't clear my name fast, it wouldn't matter what the cameras showed. I felt panic rising, but Sophie held up a hand. "Stay calm. Don't confront him. Don't tip your hand. Just keep doing your job. I'll handle the rest." It wasn't easy. The next few days felt like walking on glass. Ethan turned the charm up to 11. He stayed late helping with projects, laughed loudly with Karen in the hallways, and once, I swear, he smirked at me as if to say, "You're finished," and we both know it. Then, one morning, Sophie called me into her office. Her expression was serious, but there was something in her eyes, something I hadn't seen since this nightmare began. "Hope, Daniel," she said, closing the door behind me. We pulled the footage. My pulse thundered in my ears. She pressed play on her monitor. Grainy black and white footage filled the screen. Our server room, timestamp for the night of the crash. At first, it was just a hum of machines, empty chairs, and blinking lights. And then there he was, Ethan Miller, sliding into the chair at the terminal. He typed quickly, glancing over his shoulder once, then returning to the screen. Sophie froze the frame. The username in the corner, mine. He had logged in under my credentials. My throat went dry. There it was, the smoking gun. "He used your account," Sophie said quietly. "We cross-checked the login details with badge swipes. That night, you weren't even in the building, but Ethan was." I wanted to shout, to cry, to run straight to Karen and throw the footage in her face. But Sophie shook her head. Not yet. HR needs to follow procedure. We'll prepare the case. We'll bring it forward at the right time. For now, Daniel, keep your head down. This is bigger than just you and Ethan. For the first time in weeks, the weight on my chest eased. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't incompetent. I hadn't imagined Ethan's malice. I had proof. But as I walked out of Sophie's office, the relief was tempered by a new realization. If Ethan was willing to go this far to frame me, what would he do when he realized the cameras had caught him? This wasn't just about a promotion anymore. It was about survival. The week of the promotion interviews arrived, and my nerves were on fire. On the surface, I kept my head down, just like Sophie advised. But inside, every day felt like walking into enemy territory. Karen barely spoke to me unless necessary. The silence between us felt heavier than any argument could. Ethan, on the other hand, acted like he already had the job. He strutted through the office, cracking jokes, offering suggestions during meetings that were nothing but recycled ideas I'd pitched months earlier. The worst part? People seemed to believe him. I watched him from my desk, rage simmering under the surface. My reputation, my promotion, my career, he had nearly stolen it all. And everyone seemed blind to it. Everyone but Sophie. 2 days before the interviews, Sophie called me into her office again. She had that same calm, unreadable expression, but her eyes told me everything. "It's time," she said simply. I didn't even ask what she meant. My heart hammered in my chest as she led me down the hall to a small conference room. Waiting inside were Karen, Michael Tran, the operations director, and 2 other HR reps, and, of course, Ethan. He was leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, a smug grin plastered across his face. When I walked in, he gave me a look that said, "Game over, Ruiz." I almost lost it right then. But Sophie gave me a small nod, and I swallowed my anger. Karen cleared her throat. "We're here to address concerns about the server incident. We reviewed the logs, but Daniel has raised some serious allegations." Ethan laughed under his breath. "Allegations? Please. The logs don't lie. He made the change, it blew up, and now he's scrambling to cover his mistake." He leaned forward, looking straight at me. "Just admit it, Daniel. You screwed up." The room was silent. My fists clenched under the table. And then Sophie turned to the monitor on the wall. "Actually," she said calmly, "the logs aren't the only record we keep. The server room is under 24/7 surveillance." Ethan's smirk faltered. Sophie pressed a button, and the footage filled the screen. There was again the grainy black and white image of Ethan sliding into the server terminal, glancing over his shoulder, typing furiously. Then the frozen frame, his face illuminated by the glow of the monitor, my username in the corner. The silence that followed was deafening. Karen's eyes widened. Michael leaned forward, his jaw tightening. The other HR rep scribbled notes furiously. And Ethan? His face went pale. That's not what it looks like," he stammered, his cocky tone evaporating. I was checking something for Daniel. He asked me to." "Stop." Sophie cut him off, her voice sharp. "We verified the badge swipes. Daniel wasn't even in the building that night. You were. And you used his credentials without authorization." Ethan's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Karen's voice was cold steel. "You framed him." For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw something flicker in Karen's eyes. Not suspicion, but regret. She turned to me, her voice softer. "Daniel, I'm so sorry." But my eyes were locked on Ethan. The man who'd nearly destroyed me sat there, sweating, scrambling for words that wouldn't come. The smugness was gone. The mask had cracked. Michael finally spoke, his tone like a judge delivering a verdict. "This is not just unethical, it's sabotage. HR will proceed with termination immediately. And Daniel, your name will be cleared in the official record." I felt the breath rush out of me. Weeks of anxiety, humiliation, rage. It all drained away in that moment. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't incompetent. I was vindicated. Ethan tried one last desperate move. "You can't do this. You need me. This team needs me." Michael stood, his expression stone. No, Ethan, what this team needs is integrity. Security will escort you out. The HR reps rose, and within minutes, Ethan was gone. Just like that. The room was quiet again. Karen looked at me, her voice tinged with guilt. Daniel, I owe you an apology. I doubted you when I should have trusted you. You've carried this team for years. I'll make it right. For the first time in weeks, I felt my shoulders relax. Sophie gave me a small, satisfied smile, like a silent reminder. I told you to trust the process. When I walked out of that conference room, people were already whispering. News traveled fast. Some of my coworkers avoided my eyes, ashamed they'd doubted me. Others gave me nods of quiet respect. But one thing was certain. Ethan's empire of lies had crumbled, and for the first time in weeks, I could breathe again. The day Ethan was escorted out felt surreal. One moment, he was a golden boy strutting around the office. The next, he was just a disgraced ex-employee with a cardboard box in his arms and security at his side. I should have felt triumphant in that moment, but honestly, I just felt exhausted. Weeks of stress had burned me out. I didn't even celebrate. I just sat at my desk, quietly relieved that the nightmare was over. But the aftermath was where the real revenge unfolded. Karen, true to her word, called me into her office later that week. She apologized again, this time with genuine remorse in her eyes. Daniel, I won't pretend I didn't fail you. You deserve better. And you deserve the promotion. The interview panel has already agreed. You're the top candidate. We'll be making the announcement Friday. For the first time in weeks, I felt my chest expand with pride instead of dread. All the nights of lost sleep, all the whispered doubts around the office, all the humiliation, it was about to be wiped away. That Friday, when the announcement went out, the office buzzed. My name was on the official memo. Daniel Ruiz, Senior Systems Analyst. The very promotion Ethan had tried to steal. The congratulations from coworkers felt like a bomb. Even the ones who'd sided with Ethan now shook my hand, muttered apologies, or offered nervous smiles. A few even confessed they'd always thought something felt off about him, but hadn't spoken up. Typical. I didn't hold grudges, though, at least not against them. But Ethan, he wasn't done haunting me. About a month later, word got around that Ethan had tried to land a job at another firm in the city. He even used Karen as a reference before she knew what he'd done. HR there, being thorough, called Sophie directly. Let's just say the glowing reference Ethan had hoped for turned into a very different conversation. He didn't get the job. Over the next few weeks, I kept hearing little snippets through the grapevine. Ethan was applying everywhere, desperate, scrambling. But the tech world is smaller than people realize, and news travels fast. The guy who framed his coworker and got caught on camera isn't exactly a reputation you can shake. Meanwhile, I flourished. With a promotion came a bigger paycheck. Sure, but more importantly, it came with respect. Karen leaned on me more heavily in meetings. Michael even mentioned me in a company-wide address, praising my resilience and integrity. My ideas weren't being stolen anymore. They were being implemented. And Sophie, she stopped me one day in the hallway. I knew you'd come out stronger, she said with a rare smile. But I didn't expect you to handle it with so much composure. Most people would have lost it. I thought about that, because the truth was, I had wanted to lose it, to scream, to fight, to expose Ethan myself. But holding the line, letting the truth surface on its own, made the victory that much sweeter. The real revenge wasn't just Ethan losing his job. It was me rising higher, stronger, and more respected than I ever would have been if this had never happened. Sometimes revenge doesn't come in the form of shouting matches or dramatic takedowns. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, letting the liar's own web strangle them while you keep moving forward. Ethan wanted to bury me. Instead, he buried himself. And I walked out of the rubble with everything he wanted. My reputation, my promotion, and the respect he could never earn. That was the sweetest revenge of all.